So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of ELTAI, I welcome you all for this webinar 44 on developing writing skills in an ESL context, leveraging technology. So before we move on to the webinar, I would request you to watch a prom clip on ELTAI. So thank you so much for watching the video on ELTAI. So now we have the moderator of the session, Dr. Shabreen Sultana. She's the convener of ELTAI Guntur chapter. Madam, over to you.
Thank you, sir. On behalf of English Language Teachers Association of India, I welcome all the delegates and participants to the ELTAI National Webinar 44 on developing writing skills in an ESL context, leveraging technology. Today we have a resource person with us, Mr. Kashik Raza, who is going to present a hands-on experience on students engaging in the classroom, a productive pedagogy for the students to involve in various genres, grammar, and mechanics of writing in the ELT classroom. Mr. Kashik Raza is a faculty senator in Qatar University. He has previously taught in USA and Canada. He has served various leadership positions. Kashif has been involved in teaching, developing, supervising English for academic purposes and English for specific purposes, legal language courses, planning and implementing English education policies in colleges and university level. Kashif has reviewed an International Handbook of Education Policy published by Springer with ISBN number in 2019. Sir has multilingual skills and he has translated the information in Urdu for the Indian speaking community in the USA and New York. He interviewed Dr. Dudley Reynolds on language policy in globalized context in September 2020. He has served as resource person in various workshops and national and international conferences. Sir has published many journals, many articles in various reputed journals like TESOL, Teaching English to the Speakers of Other Languages. Sir, please welcome. Over to Kashif, sir.
Well, thank you very much for the nice introduction, and thank you to English Language Teacher Association of India for the invitation. It's really nice to talk to you all. So good evening and assalamu alaikum from Qatar, and I hope you will enjoy today's presentation. So let's get started with it. Okay. So in today's presentation, basically, we're going to talk about second language writing. And I'm going to start with an overview of the research that Dr. Shabrin just talked about to kind of explain how I see second language writing and technology and how I implement it in my language classrooms. So in 2018, I proposed this teaching adaptation model, and a lot of the stuff that I share in my professional development sessions comes from this teaching adaptation model. And that's why I keep referring to it, because with an understanding of the model, you would be able to better understand what I am proposing during these sessions. So the teaching adaptation model was basically proposed based upon the need that the students' population I teach are different from the population of the context. So when we introduce some activities or some type of curriculum in our classroom, it cannot be copy-pasted from different contexts. It has to be modified a little bit. And this teaching adaptation model basically gives you an opportunity to filter those activities and content before implementing in the classroom. So these are the 5 strategies that I proposed in my teaching adaptation model, included understanding student population. So when we say understanding student population, it means developing an understanding of their skills and their areas of development. For example, we are in an English language classroom. So when students come to the classroom, they're not coming as first-time learners. They come with some background information, some knowledge, and skills of different languages. So when we develop an understanding of our student population, we look at what languages they're bringing to the classroom, and what skills they're bringing to the classroom, and what are their areas of improvement. Developing an understanding of this helps you to not only focus on the areas of development, but also utilize the skills that students are bringing in the classroom. This is what allows you to create an environment where the job of the teacher is not as a dictator. He's not dictating, or she's not dictating knowledge or instruction. She's facilitating education. So to facilitate education, we should be aware of what our students are bringing to the classroom. The next strategy is filtering instruction. So when we develop an understanding of our students, we have to filter what our students will understand better. What some students are, for example, visual learners. Other students are oral learners. Some students understand instructions when they're written. So we need to see what instruction would work better. And here I also propose using the first language or the second language of the students. For example, if we're talking of India, every state or province has different language. People speak multiple languages. So when students come to the classroom with those languages and accents, as teachers, we try to accommodate those skills by welcoming those languages in the classroom. So while we're teaching English, we're also helping students to connect it with their previous knowledge. And as teachers, we also want to make sure that what we're trying to teach them is actually understood by everybody. And that's where we have to see whether oral instructions are working well, or oral instructions in combination with visual instructions will work well, or other ways of teaching students the skills that we want to teach. The third strategy I thought would help adapting the teaching in our local context would be increasing student participation. So I see students as my colleagues in the classroom. I am not the boss and they're not my employees. We are working together. So when I say student participation, basically their involvement in what we're learning and how we're learning it. There are different ways teachers can include or increase student participation in the classroom. One way is, for example, in the beginning of the semester, you can talk to them. What are your needs? And what are the best ways you think will work for you? And similarly, during the semester, you can still talk to your students. For example, one thing I like to do with my students is to discuss the deadlines. Especially now, because of the COVID-19, we have gone online. So I encourage them to help me set the deadlines. I encourage them to help me understand what way of teaching is working well for them, how much time we should spend on one activity versus the other one. So when they participate, the role of the teacher becomes as a facilitator. You are a bridge between what is being learned and what the students are learning. So we're just kind of connecting the threads as we're teaching. The fourth one is the value clarification. I believe that education or the field of education is an opportunity for teachers to clarify some of the values that students hold prior to coming to our classrooms and the values they would learn before they leave our classrooms. So as teachers, we can include some room for value clarifications. For example, when we discuss, let's say, different languages, contemporary research is pointing to multilingualism, translanguaging, plurilingualism. All of that means that students' first languages should not be, demotivated. They should not be discouraged from the classroom. So, but sometimes it happens that parents or students do not want to speak their first language in the classroom. I'm a big proponent. I'm a big supporter of multilingualism. So some of the activities I will show you you will see that I encourage my students to first speak their first language and use their first language in developing writing skills. And their first language is Arabic. So when they come to classroom, they basically use Arabic in learning English. If we talk about India, for example, students who are speaking, for example, Hindi, Urdu, Punjabi, and other different dialects or different languages, they can use those languages in the classroom. As teachers, we can clarify the value that your prior knowledge in your mother tongue is not completely discouraged from the classroom. You can use that knowledge in the classroom. Another thing we could do in value clarification is to help them clarify views about life, clarify views about society, clarify views about their beliefs. So we make them good citizens. The purpose of English is not to train them in a particular way, but to make them think critically, solve problems, think of solutions. So when we teach them value clarification, we're basically inviting them to think about the values they're bringing to the classroom and how they can develop on them. The last one is keeping a teaching journal. This is teacher focused. A teacher should keep track of his or her activities, what is going well, what is not going well, for which activity my students are responding well, for which activity my students are not responding well. So you're talking to yourself after every lesson. I wanted to showcase how I use it, but in a minute. So today we are going to focus on filtering instruction. So when we teach, what can we do to filter instruction that our teachers understand, our students understand what we're talking about, and they can make the best out of it. This paper is published was published in 2018. If you would like, you're more than welcome to go ahead and read this paper. It's freely available, and you can download it. You can look at it. A 2020 version of the same paper was also published, and in that paper, I discussed how the teaching adaptation model can be implemented in Canadian ESL classrooms. And today we're going to see how we can do it in Indian classrooms. Now, the model I proposed, or the instruction, when I say filtering instruction, they're basically based upon the three beliefs, or they address these three misconceptions in English language teaching. The first misconception a lot of teachers have is that the needs of my students are similar to other students' needs. And this means that every classroom is same. Every student comes to the classroom with similar problems. So when a teacher who believes in this would start generalizing. For example, that student will say, everybody in this country, everybody in that country has grammar mistakes. Everybody in that country struggles with vocabulary development. People from country or A or B, or people from, students from group A or B, or province A or B have these problems. So we start generalizing things. This is a misconception. Different students have different academic needs. And that's what my model addresses. The second misconception we have in English language teaching is that our students learn in the same way as other students. So this means one size fits all. If I create an activity, I expect all my students to learn from the same instructional method that I think majority of the students will learn from. This misconception often leaves out a big chunk of the society or student population, because like I said in the beginning, some students are visual learners, others are oral learners. And if you're providing them instruction in writing where you're not including any visuals, they may feel discouraged, and they will not be able to benefit fully from the classroom. And the third thing is that students and teacher expectations align. So this means that when our students come to classroom, we are expecting them to understand why they are there. They understand the meaning of the syllabus, the activities we are including in the classroom, the syllabus we have designed. This does not happen all the time. Students come with different expectations to the classroom, and they don't always align with teachers. I'm not arguing they never align. I'm arguing that they may not align most of the time. For example, a student is coming to the classroom to get a D score, and I may be trying to help my student get an A. So our expectations may not align. The student will not put that much effort that I expect from my student. If you want to look more into how teacher-student expectations do align and what problems they can cause, you're more than welcome to look at my 2019 paper. Now, what can we do then? What are the solutions? So the model I proposed in the beginning basically it invites us to look at some effective teaching strategies that we can adapt to accommodate our student needs. And that's what research refers to as differentiated instruction, that we differentiate our instruction based upon student needs. We don't treat all students in the same way, and we don't try to try like one size fits all strategy, because that may not work. So what do we need to do? We need to look at the cultural, linguistic, and educational background of our students, and then develop teaching strategies that will work best for them. And you can see the three suggestions or three techniques that I use, and which are informed by the teaching adaptation model I presented in the beginning. So teachers can address learner differences, and you can address learner differences by first collecting the data about your students, like what languages are they speaking, what have they studied in the past. You could also do some sample assessments in the beginning, and then see at what level your students are, and then you bring in materials in the classroom. So there should always be some modification and an ongoing change happening in the way you're introducing activities and the way you're teaching. The second thing is developing culturally responsive curriculum. So CRP, or recent research also refers to as culturally sustaining pedagogy. This invites us to keep in mind the culture of the students and trying to link things with the culture of the students rather than trying to introduce them to a completely different culture. Yes, we can include a portion or a section of our curriculum that will focus on multiculturalism, but that should not be the main purpose. For example, I teach Qatari students here. In order to include culturally responsive curriculum in my classrooms, the topics we discuss, the areas we discuss, somehow link with Qatar. We do talk about the outside world, We discuss, for example, problems in Canada, in the Middle East, in Asia, and other countries, but we keep coming back to Qatar because this is where students are going to practice after they graduate. And that links with the third one, that the activities and lessons you are planning and introducing should be linked with students' practical life. They should be able to think, okay, why am I learning it? What's the role? What's the reason behind learning all of this? Sometimes students sit in the classroom and after they have finished the entire semester, you ask them, what do you think are you going to do with the skills you have developed? And they may say, I don't know, I just got a B plus score. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. So this is where you link it with their practical life during the learning process so that when they graduate or while they're studying, they're able to connect with the outside world. So there will be a connection created between the classroom and between their home and society. They keep swinging back. The third strategy basically addresses the practice where classrooms are segregated from the society. So schools and classrooms are treated as something which does not exist as part of the society. What I'm proposing is that there should be fluid movement between classroom and society, classroom and home. So students should be able to bring examples from home, from society, the friends they have and what they have been discussing with their friends. There should be a connection between that. That's how students feel very motivated. The examples I'm going to show you will address all three of these strategies, and we'll see how I do it. And hopefully you'll be able to take some of these with you to your classrooms and implement them. So as a teacher, I use my teaching adaptation model exactly the same way I expect others to use. And I've got this paper right here next to me. So basically what I do is I print this sheet and I make notes on it every class. So for example, if a student brings up something, I write it down under understanding student population. If instruction strategy is not working well, I will write it down there. As an example, like 2 weeks ago, a student started crying in class and I asked her what's going on. She said, teacher, I don't understand technology. It's not my fault. I mean, I speak English and I can communicate, but when it comes to using technology, my anxiety level goes higher. So what I thought was, okay, I need to come up with ideas where technology does not become a hurdle in the learning process. Technology becomes a bridge between me and my students. And then we address those problems, right? Okay, so what we're going to look at today is see how the context, which I just spoke about, like understanding your students, understanding their needs, technology and second language writing, how can we put them together in a circle and work with all three of these sections? So if I fill this with my student population, my context is an EFL context. Here, students speak English as a foreign language. My students are Arabs, and they speak Arabic and some English, or some are very good. So there's a mixed proficiency level. And I work in a higher education setting. And then the technologies we use here are Blackboard, Google Drive, MS Teams, and Remind. And then second language writing we're developing is mostly like essay writing, summary writing, descriptive writing. And you as teachers can also use this image or format to fill in details. And then you can see what you can get from your classroom. And when you design activities, you can fill in your details and you know what your students are bringing to the classroom, what technology you're using, and how you are going to use them for teaching second language writing. So as teachers, I mean, you can try it. I'll give you 1 or 2 minutes. You could do it on a piece of paper, you can do on whatever you want. So can you fill in the details about your context, the technologies you use in your classrooms, and what type of second language writing you're teaching? Essays, paragraphs, sentence structures. Because when I show you the activities, you'll be able to go back to your context and relate those activities with your context and the technologies. So let's take 2 minutes, fill out the details. So I'd like you to fill out the details like this. And you don't have to share them in the chat. You can just keep them with you. Okay, so I hope you have written down something. So when we go to the activities, I'd like you to look back at the image created on a piece of paper, and then see whether you'll be able to take some of these ideas to your classroom and how you may have to modify them. Like I was talking in the beginning, what I'm going to propose or show here, you may not be able to copy paste. And that's what my model is basically encouraging, that whenever you go and listen to somebody, you don't have to take everything to the classroom. And when your students are not responding, we cannot blame the students because we haven't modified them according to our student needs. The activities and the materials I show you, you can look at the ideas, but still consider your students. That's why I wanted you to fill out this image so that you keep in mind your student population before you implement the activities that are shown to you today. Okay, so we use I'm going to show you 3 technologies that I use to teach second language writing. The first thing we use heavily is Blackboard. This is a paid technology. Since we use it, that's why I wanted to include it. The other 2 are free, and you can also see whether you want to include them or not. But the Blackboard will still show you the way I engage with my students, so you may get some ideas when you look at the other 2 technologies and see whether you can use them in your classrooms. So when we use technology, I mean, before the pandemic, we have seen that technology was part of teaching. It was not heavily teaching. But since the pandemic has started, technology has become an essential part of teaching. We cannot teach without technology. Even if you want students to work on a piece of paper, you send them an activity, they're still going to take a photo and send it to you. So technology has become part of English language teaching. And we also need to keep in mind that our students, not all of them are tech savvy. Some, yeah, they can use mobile phones. They're very good at smartphones, but we should not be taking this for granted, that since they are good at using mobile phones, they will also be good at using Blackboard or Google Drive or other technologies. Using technologies for educational purposes is not always the same as using WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, and other online platforms. Another thing I want to highlight before I go to examples is that there's always anxiety in foreign language learning. When we speak a different language, we're always worried whether I will mispronounce a word, my sentences will make sense, do I sound like that, do I sound like this? And now with the inclusion of technology, the anxiety level has gone higher, like I gave you an example of my student. And the post-secondary context, which I'm going to show you, this is where our students are also tech savvy. They use technology. They have electronic devices, the modern electronic devices, but we still see that they struggle to use educational technologies in the classroom. And as teachers, I try to accommodate by creating very simple step-by-step instructions so that they can go through all of the steps with me in the classroom and also outside the classroom. So the first example I'm going to show you is summary writing. When we teach summary, the level of the English I teach, this is the exit level. And after this, students just graduate from our college, they never come back to us. And before this, they have already taken 3 courses. So before they come here, they should have learned some paraphrasing techniques, finding main ideas of the text, and also an introduction to summary writing. So I should be starting at the 3rd or the 4th step, structure of the summary and practice. But since the pandemic has impacted a lot of education, and a lot of my students were not able to develop the skills that they may have when they were on campus, I decided to break down and start from very simple steps and then move on to the next steps. So what we did is we first started with looking at synonyms. What are synonyms? And then we go to the sentence level paraphrase. And then we come to finding the main idea of a text. And then structure of the summary. So the step that we were supposed to start, we didn't start there. We actually went back and revised all of that they have learned over the last 3 semesters, so that they are able to revise it before we jump into writing the summary. So for example, they first look at the synonyms at word level, and then they give me the examples, like sample sentences in black color, and then they themselves paraphrase those sentences in red color. So these are the students who are doing all of this, and I'm just sitting down and watching them do the tasks. Once I make sure that they have understood sentence level paraphrasing, we go to the structure of the summary. And that's where I explain what we are supposed to learn in this course. So before they come here, they have already done most of the part or most of the stuff that we were supposed to do while we look at the summary. So I simplified it because, again, technology is creating another layer of difficulty, and I did not want technology to be a hurdle in my classrooms. When they understand the structure, then they start practicing. And to help them further feel supported, I make a video of the summary writing, paragraph writing, essay writing. In addition to the in-class instruction, they can also go and watch that video every time they feel that, okay, we don't know what to do. So they are always referred to the video. Then they try it on their own. They look at they find the main idea of a text or 2 texts. They summarize the main ideas, and then they paraphrase the main ideas, and then they summarize them in the form like this. And when they start first time, they're basically given a kind of a format where sentence beginnings are given to them, and then they go ahead and try it themselves. You see how all of this is being supported step by step because of technology. And I don't want them to feel that, okay, because I don't know how to use technology, my teacher is going to fail me. I am not testing their technical or technological skills. I'm testing their English language skills. That's why technology should not be a problem at all. Then, in addition to working on the summary with me in the classroom, they're also provided a checklist. This is done during practice and after they write, when they write their final summary for grades. They go back to the checklist again and again and again to make sure they have included everything they were supposed to do. And then they go ahead and post. We look at that all in the class. I provide them feedback. They feel encouraged. And you can see I had 25 students this semester, and you can see 21, 31, 20, 16. Majority of them are working hard and feel encouraged to post their summaries on the Blackboard. Another thing we do, I spoke about visual learning. So, sorry. Should be happening at this point. Another thing we do is to support students in visual use of visual resources. So I also teach ESP law course, and some of my students were finding difficulty in writing down their description of the court. They were supposed to look at the Qatari court and compare it with a British court, and they just used an image. They drew the image. So this is called multi-modality, using multiple models to teach and communicate. So students do not always have to communicate in the form of sentences. They can also communicate through images, because we're teaching them language. The language I'm speaking is just one form of language. These images are type of language. They're also using images to communicate. So I encourage them to use other images if they cannot produce good sentences. Then they look at their own image and they write a description. Supporting students as much as you can during the learning process. Then when they write down, I provide them feedback. It could be on Blackboard. It could be detailed in terms of language, in terms of content. It could be very brief. And then you discuss it with them during your sessions. And they can also use their first language while working on it. For example, as you can see, in this activity, students were asked to interview someone in the family in Arabic. Then they translate the interview in English for the classroom. Then they come and present. If you're trying this in India, for example, you can ask students to interview their parents in their mother tongue, because that's the language they speak at home. Then you ask them to translate that in English and give a short presentation, or tell the whole class in English what they have discussed with their family. And they can be using the notes. It doesn't have to be grammatical perfect. And you can see on the right side in English notes, students still has written Arabic words because they couldn't find a proper English term for these words because they don't exist. For example, when we talk about food, like I was talking to Shabreen and other colleagues about biryani today, there's no English word for biryani. That's the name of a food. So if your parents were eating biryani at home or some other local food, you can just use those words. You don't have to translate them. Same thing for different traditions and cultural things. You can use the genuine words that are used in the home to talk about them. And this is one student who provided very good feedback. We can ignore the language, but you can see how positive they feel in my classroom when they are encouraged to use their first language and different activities. Okay, I'm going to go a little faster because I may be running out of time. I want to save some time for engaging with you in terms of questions at the end. So the second technology I wanted to introduce is Google Drive. This is free of cost. You don't have to pay for it. The features are interesting. You can create materials, you can invite, you can share materials with your students. And there are so many videos on YouTube that can explain how you can use Google Drive. And there's space provided to you, and it's enough space to upload documents for one classroom or multiple classrooms, unless you upload videos, but the other content should be enough. And I used it in the US when I was teaching at Oklahoma City University. We used Google Drive there, and my students felt very supported because they were not only using Google Drive in the classroom, but they could also access the materials when they leave the classroom. And I also use it here. For example, I give them a writing task. These are some images that they're already familiar with, and they have some background information. For example, one of them is taken from the classroom. So I taught them descriptive writing, and they go to the Google Drive at their convenience. They describe these images, and then me and the students can have a look at it. It's like a discussion forum where everybody can look at it. And I wanted to show you how it looks like because I still have it with me. Okay, can you see my screen? Yeah, I think, yeah. Could someone confirm if you could see the screen?
Yes, it's visible. Yeah, your screen is
visible.
visible.
Great. Sure. So on Google Drive, what happens is I create a PowerPoint for my class, and then I also create links. So I click on the link, and the link can take me to the activity. For example, one activity we use, this is for beginners. They describe a picture. So there are two students who are giving instructions to each other by looking at a photo, and the other student is drawing it. And they are following each other's instructions. After they have drawn the photo, then they discuss the photo with each other and see whether the instructions were properly followed or not. This can be done online too. For example, students talking to each other and then saying, okay, draw a table over here, draw something over here. For example, this is an image of a bedroom. So student A will talk about the bedroom, saying there's a master bedroom in the middle of the room, and next to that is a sofa, and next to that is this and that. And the other student is drawing it. When that student finishes, the student B describes. Both of them finish, then they compare their description with the photo and see whether their photo matches with the actual photo or not, and then they compare and contrast. And one thing we need to notice here as teachers is that the purpose is not to check the artistic quality of the drawings that students are doing. The purpose is basically to see whether they can follow the instructions or not. This is at the beginning level. We could also do it at advanced level, where we could do the reading and writing, for example, writing a detailed essay. Another activity I do where students watch a video and then they plan for a camp, like camping activity. And again, all of that can be done on Google. You can provide them feedback. For example, a link to the video is provided. and then a link to the activities provided. Once they click on this link, for example, this will open. These are questions and answers. While they're listening, they take notes. Then they come here and write down the answers. And as teacher, you can watch it live to make sure your students are doing what they're supposed to do. And then you can discuss the answers with them after everybody's done. Other students can also be invited to contribute. And you can also provide them a checklist. Again, you can create a link on Google Drive. While they do the activity, they can go back to and see the checklist, whether they are including all of these things or not. So this is free of cost, and you can do it all on your own. Now, sometimes one of the concern all of us have because of online teaching is that there's a lot of cheating involved. You don't know who is doing the work. To bring in value clarification, I sometimes turn those issues into my lessons. For example, I ask my students to discuss cheating. For example, let's say this is an activity where they have a friend who has an exam, right? And they have to give that person suggestions on how to cheat on the exam. The other student will say, no, you should not be giving him suggestions on how to cheat. So they're discussing the advantages, disadvantages, going back and forth, and saying why something is good, why something is not good. This is a speaking activity. You can also turn it into a writing activity. For example, you can do a process essay. So let's say the scenario is that a student has an exam and he wants to learn how to cheat. This is a descriptive writing. Now, one student will write an essay saying there are 5 things you can do to cheat on the exam. While they are working, they're basically clarifying their values. They are discussing the topics which are of concern to the teachers. And as students, they're basically developing their understanding that, okay, my teachers already know that some students may be cheating for during these writings. And by discussing, going back and forth, you're basically encouraging students to bring up the solutions, the advantages, disadvantages of doing those things. For example, one of the activity I like about cheating is debate. So one student has an IELTS exam, and one group of students is going to give him or her suggestions why the person should cheat on the exam. The other group is going to give 3 reasons why the person should not cheat on the exam, and then they are going back and forth. You could either do it as a speaking activity, you could do it as a writing activity. They write down their instructions, they speak, they talk, they go back and forth. So it could be done in multiple ways. They can also upload their recording on Google Drive, and you can access them. One thing I like to do, coming from an Asian background, is wedding arrangements, because our weddings look like this. This is an advanced level activity. So students can become planners. They plan a wedding by becoming, taking different roles. We call it role modeling. For example, if you can choose 4 students, one can become a bride, the other one can become a groom, one can become a priest or imam, clergy, pandit, whatever you want to call him. One can become a planner and an accountant. They take different roles and then they plan the wedding. Then they come to the classroom and give a presentation. Or they can write it down as a description. Person 1 will do this, person 2 will do this, person 3 will do this. And this is how you are engaging students. And your job as a teacher is just to facilitate the learning. You're not going after them and saying, oh, you haven't completed it, you haven't completed it. Because if one person doesn't complete, the other group is going to suffer. And when you are giving them the role, you are using peer pressure. Everybody feels welcome. Everybody feels that I have to do something, because if I don't do it, then the next person will not be able to do his or her work. And because of that, the whole group is going to fail. So let's use peer pressure. Let's use students to encourage other students. And we as teachers just take a back foot and become the facilitators of learning. And your Google Drive can look like this. For example, you can create your materials, you can upload your documents, and you can just keep them there. For example, all these links can be created. There are so many videos on YouTube you can watch about how to use Google Drive, and they can help you create links between different between different activities. And every time a student clicks on the link, for example, let's say here I go to camping activity, I read the instructions here. So I don't want my students to write something on this page because this will be used for the next class as well. I want them to click on the link and a new page will open for them. They save the page with their name and these will be their answers. Then I can go and check who has written what. And the main task will be untouched. Nothing has been written here. So students can go, you as a facilitator can go back and forth between activity and student work. Okay. The last one I wanted to share today is, sorry, here we go, is the use of Remind. So Remind is another free app. It's you cannot do much. I mean, you cannot do the same thing as you do on Blackboard or Google Drive, but you can still connect with your students. It works like WhatsApp, but it's an educational app. And for example, one reason I like Remind is that if you send someone a message after 8 p.m., Remind will remind you that it's too late to send a message to your students. So there is some value involved that you should not be contacting your students or teachers after 8 p.m. because that's their personal time. So you can create classes, you can create groups of classes, and you can post things for your classroom, and students, everybody can see it. You can also communicate with your students alone. You can download it on your desktop. You can also download it on your mobile phone as an app. So it works like WhatsApp, where you can create groups, share materials, provide feedback. The way I use it, for example, I use it to connect it with my whole class, and I also share with them the materials, the worksheets that we do in class. Some of them who missed the class, they can easily access it on their phone, and students will not come to class and say, "Teacher, I didn't know." And you can say, "Well, I posted on Remind. It's your fault you didn't see it." So, like putting the students at the in front of the cart and making them responsible for their learning. So you can also share, for example, take photos of activities you're doing in class. In case they have an internet problem, they cannot join, they cannot access Google Drive, they cannot access Blackboard, you can still send them photos. And I also communicate with my students, for example, provide the feedback. This is my student, let's say Mariam, and she wanted to understand the task, and we had a chit chat with her of what I'm expecting and what she can do and cannot do. Then students also send me feedback or their work, and I send them my feedback. For example, you can see on the left side, this is a student's work who couldn't submit through Blackboard or Google Drive. She sent it to me on Remind. I looked at it, I marked it, gave my feedback, and sent her my score. And of course, feedback. Now, before I conclude, I want to, I showed you how technology is working in a wonderful way, but we should also be careful in how we are using technology in the classroom. What I have showed you today are some of the good examples of how technology has worked. There are days where it does not work. For example, my students don't always respond. Sometimes we have internet problems. Sometimes we have this and that problem. So we as teachers have to make decisions of how we can use technology in the best way in our classrooms. Let's not take it for granted that technology should be or must be a part of education. I see technology as a platform which we can use to teach English. There is a misunderstanding among our colleagues, some of our colleagues, that we must teach them technology with the same importance as English. Yes, they should learn to use technology, but we as English language teachers are not responsible for it. English language has nothing to do with technology. We use technology to facilitate the learning process, and technology must not become our main priority. If students are not responding, students are not performing well, and there is a problem, and that problem is the heavy use of technology, then we need to decrease it. We need to simplify things for our students, because foreign language anxiety combined with the anxiety created by technology can discourage students from contributing to the classroom, learning in the way we expect them to learn, and then probably dropping the lesson. So I want you to be a bit critical in the way you want to use technology in the classroom and see how it works well for you. Okay, I would like to thank you for listening to the presentation carefully, and let's get to the discussion part. Let's say what we have in the chat box. So I'll stop sharing the slides.
Yes. Before asking queries, I would like to thank and congratulate Professor Kashik Raza sir on behalf of the participants for your excellent and wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So the first question here is, how can technology be leveraged to provide fully differentiated instructions and thereby moving towards personalized learning in a heterogeneous class? Is there a specific technological solution available for use?
Right. Yeah, that's a very good question. I think I tried to address that when I was showing the Google Drive. That's where you can create an environment where the technology is used at a personal level. So before I propose any technology, I think what we need to look at is, why do my students need technology? If you come with that understanding to the classroom, then you would be able to make better decisions about what technology will work best for you and for your students, and what technology will not. I see that Google Drive works really well. This is where students can access the activity in the classroom, outside the classroom. They can also see what other students are doing, and they can engage with the task in and outside the classroom. And the second thing which I emphasized in my in the examples I showed you was that we need to simplify things for students. They have been in online classrooms almost for a year and a half now, and I'm sure majority of them may not have learned the skills that they would have learned in the classroom when they engage with other students. They look at examples, there's live learning going on. So our expectation should be very realistic in terms of what students are bringing to the classroom. So let's try to simplify as much as we can to leverage technology, to make the best use of technology, and use technology to facilitate education rather than become our main goal. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, sir. So we have an interesting question here from Vishnu None. Can speaking skills help students improve their writing skills?
Yes, they can. Yeah. So in one of the activity, for example, that debating about cheating, students can write down something and they can have a look at it when they are speaking. So we can use integrated skills. We can develop integrated skills. You could also do listening and writing. For example, students watch a video, then they come to the classroom and report on the video. One of the activity I use in my legal courses is I ask students to watch movies, like movies on legal issues. They take notes, they come to the classroom, and then they reflect upon those notes. So there's listening and speaking involved there. Sorry, listening, writing, and speaking involved there. You could also ask students to, for example, when we ask them to prepare a presentation, they create a PowerPoint slide. So they are writing something, and then they come and speak. So writing and speaking can definitely be put together. So yeah, integrated skills development is a big area, and there's a lot of work done in that area, and you can definitely find wonderful examples.
Sir, connecting to legal courses, we have a question, interesting question from Dr. Vaibhav Sabnis, that what course content and methodology should be there for law students in order to strengthen their linguistic competence?
Thank you for asking that question, and I'm smiling because I was asked that question in the past as well, and I myself have struggled with that in my classrooms. So the course I taught in the past, I also developed a legal English course. The problem with the legal English courses is that there are very limited number of textbooks, and the textbooks which meet our student needs. Unfortunately, the big publishers produce textbooks which are general in nature. They want to reach out to a bigger audience, bigger student population, and that's why they're difficult to adapt in every context. you still have to make modifications. For example, if I give example of where I teach, we are using a legal English textbook which was designed for students who study law in English. My students learn or study law in Arabic. So what I do in my classrooms is try to use the local context when we look at the meanings of vocabulary. So, for example, when they watch those movies, they take notes. So one student becomes the defendant, the other one becomes the opponent, and they prepare their notes from the movie. Then they search the local legal practices. They look at the local, legal system and see how will that case be presented in the local context. This is where they're using the vocabulary which is relevant for their context. For example, one of the word I was teaching in the legal list, the legal vocabulary list, which was given to me was organizations, like associations, like teacher associations, doctor associations. The context where I teach there, that concept is not familiar. We don't have any associations here. Or unions, they don't have any unions here. What they have is committees. The concept is pretty much similar. The committee takes your concerns and then shares them with the government, and the government tries to solve them. But if I fail my students because they don't know the meaning of the word union, it's unfair because they learned about that word in a different way, and they used a different word for that concept. So when you negotiate the meanings with your students, we should keep in mind the local context and see what students are learning. That's why developing an understanding of your students' strengths and weaknesses is very important. You go back to the beginning of the semester and see what have students told me, and how can I, include activities and tasks where students will feel motivated. I think in one of the sessions, I have spoken about teaching law students. And in that session, I showed examples of how I localize the curriculum or the content and encourage students to use the Qatari legal system or Qatari legal law in the classroom when they develop an understanding of the British legal vocabulary. So summing it up, I think as teachers, we have to make critical decisions of how we can create materials which are culturally relevant to our students. Otherwise, they will finish an activity and say, well, why am I learning about the British legal system when I am practicing in India or in Qatar, for example? So we need to link it with their practical life, and we can do that when we have an understanding of what our students' needs are and how we can accommodate those needs.
Thank you, sir. So we have a very interesting questions related to research area from T.H. Lawrence. Could you explain again how cheating and plagiarism can be verified in an online education system?
Interesting question. Well, we have some, we can try. I mean, there are always going to be cases where we will not be able to catch. I think a lot of times students cheat because first, they don't have the confidence that what they're submitting is of high quality. Second, they don't have the skills. They haven't learned what you have been teaching them. And third, it could be something that is beyond their ability. You have given them, for example, a 1,000 words assignment to do within 2 days, so they cannot finish it. And that's where they jump to the shortcut. As teachers, we can, the question that was asked earlier about integrated skills, that could be a very good way to discourage cheating or to catch cheating. For example, what I do in my classrooms when students submit something, I ask them to discuss it with me. So if they have done it themselves, they will be able to communicate the main ideas in their writing or speaking. If they have not, if they're reading from a piece of paper, if they have it recorded and someone is telling them what to do and what not to do, during that question and answer session, they will get caught. So integrated skills can be very useful in discouraging cheating and as well as catching it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. There are a few more questions that are very, very important for us to answer. And due to time constraint, I will share the questions through mail, sir. Yes,
Sure.
thank you. Now I would like to request Dr. N. Shakila Madam, Joint Secretary of ELTAI Guntur Chapter, to propose a vote of thanks.
Good evening, all of you. It's really a wonderful talk, sir. I'm very happy to be a part and a pastor of this session today. And distinguished speakers, organizing members of ELTAI, and all the participants. Good evening to all. On behalf of English Language Teachers Association of India, ELTAI, I feel immense pleasure to propose vote of thanks to the 44th ELTAI webinar on developing English skills, which is organized by Guntur chapter. First, I thank our eminent speaker, Mr. Kashik Raza sir, faculty senator, Qatar University, who spared the time from his busy schedule to grace this webinar with his extremely relevant address on writing skills. Sir, your speech is really admirable, and it's really a need of the hour and an eye-opening to all the English teachers in the present generation or the contemporary teachers. The talk which you have given on how to compensate the technology is very, very essential nowadays, and how to encourage students to participate actively in the classroom without using technology, using Blackboard, and also like Google Drive, and also the new thing which you have given us today is the use of Remind app is really very innovative, and it's very, the strategies which you have guided us today are very useful to us, sir. And here, uh, teachers should be like facilitators, but not like a boss or dictators is really the main gist of your thing. And technology should not be a hurdle to the students. Yes, we have to use technology to facilitate the students to teach English language for the first learners. And whereas nowadays technology is becoming a hurdle and they are just getting afraid to sit in, to participate actively in the classes, is really very, very inspiring, and it's really point to be noted carefully to all the English teachers in this generation, sir. I really am very, very happy to this. And next, I take the opportunity to specially thank the national body members of ELTAI, Professor Ilango sir, Professor Ramani sir, and Professor Mohan Raj sir, for the innovative ideas of conducting webinars like this, which on both literature and language, which are very, very useful to all the English teachers and also the students who are very interested to learn English language. Finally, my deep sense of appreciation and gratitude to all the participants, organizing committee, and technical team of ELTAI, especially Pradeep Samsur, who is really very encouraging, and also people who are in live with us today in this session and are supporting us for the successful completion of this webinar. Once again, I thank all of you for being with us in this evening. Have a wonderful day. Good evening. Thank you, Ananda. Thank you.
So thank you, participants, for making this session very good one, encouraging one. And again, I thank the moderators for moderating the session very well. An announcement: the next webinar scheduled for the 21st March 2020 will be on MBA program. Is it losing its sheen? Conducted by Bangalore chapter. I request all the participants to participate in this webinar as well and get benefited. Thank you so much.